Well, thank you for that introduction. And can I also thank Clubwise for sponsoring this session. I have collaborated with Clubwise in the past. I'm collaborating with Clubwise now, and we will be making available to you a series of online lessons that I've put together with Clubwise to help businesses recover as quickly as possible. So today what we're going to focus on is exactly that. How can you recover? How can you accelerate the speed of that recovery? And what are some of the things you can do to achieve that? Now, there are things we can do within small businesses that you can't do with the larger businesses. And I spend a lot of time working with big international health club chains, multi-site businesses, but I also do spend time with smaller businesses, single site operators, owner operators. And one of the things that I think is a real challenge within our industry at the moment is the just the vast amounts of information and the vast amounts of data that are being thrown around. And it's not uncommon to go onto some of the social media platforms or even some of the trade association press and see data about what's going on and who's recovering. My suggestion to you is this: trust in your own data. I've seen big news organisations reporting data about what's happening within the industry, and when I've phoned up their help desks and stuff and started to inquire and say, oh, I'm really interested in that article you've published or the thing you just had on the TV, where did that data come from? They get very sketchy. So, and I'm not convinced that some of the data that's being put out there is actually just as accurate as it says it is. So for me, when I'm running my business, I don't disconnect my business from everybody else's by saying it's not important what other people do. It is. But actually, I need to know my numbers and what's going on in my business. So trust in your own data. Now, typically within a health club or a studio, what you've got is a selection of members. And we tend to think of these often as just either members or not members. But they break down into different groups. And in marketing, you'd use a persona or an avatar to create marketing materials. Within the club, though, there are behaviours that you can look at that will help you understand what's going on and what you need to work on. Now, this is a typical club grouping, and I've just put here some labels on this. I've called them hardcore, enthusiast, regulars, irregulars and sleepers. And pre-pandemic, that was pretty much the makeup of a club. But when the pandemic hit and businesses had to close, what happened was overnight things changed. A huge number of people that had traditionally been involved in the business, either paying and visiting or paying and not visiting, changed their behaviour. COVID changed their behaviour. Now, some of them it changed because actually they weren't using the business. They were asleep, they weren't coming in, but they were paying. And we were happy to take that money. But when we reopened, a large proportion of those people just disappeared. And in my example here, I've gone from a club that perhaps had 1,000 customers pre-pandemic to just 600 customers post-pandemic. And people are saying to me, Paul, what can you do about those other 400? Those 400 that haven't come back? Well, we're going to tackle that in this session. But I think it's also important to understand what you need to do with the 600 that are coming in. Now, one of the things that you see just throughout business itself is there's often a huge focus on acquiring new customers. All the special offers, all the deals are for the new customers. And the existing customers, the existing members are like, well, what's in it for us? Why are we continue, but they're getting a better offer? One of my things I'm going to say to you now is focus a lot of attention on the ones that are coming in, because they're the bedrock of your base. They're the bedrock of your business. And you need to keep them coming in, because while you're trying to rebuild that 400 member gap, you have to make sure that 600 that you've got don't fall away as well. So we're going to be focusing on that quite a bit as well. Now, this is typically what we see in terms of weekly active users. So one of the characteristics we often look for within a business is the visit frequency and the visit frequency pattern. And what you see here is the grey line represents pretty much the visit frequency pattern of the members over 2019. So you can see there's about 80% of members, or just under at some points, visiting on a weekly basis, which means 20% of the customers are not. And you can see that fluctuates over the course of the year. You can also see the red line represents when we went into lockdown. Now, I'm based here in the UK, so the dates and weeks of the year that represents for us may be different for you. But there is a period where you went into lockdown, unless you're in certain states or certain areas of the world. But after lockdown, what happened in terms of visit frequency? We see a massive surge in returners. In fact, we see a lot of people coming back, and it gives the impression that the clubs are busy. And they are busy, but they're busy with the same people visiting more frequently rather than busy with everybody coming back. And that can be a little bit misleading. You can get into the position where you start to feel relaxed and go, oh, look, the club's busy, we're going to be okay. Now, in maths, 1 times 7 and 7 times 1 are exactly the same thing. But in business, that's not always true. Because if you've got 1 customer visiting 7 times a week, that's not the same as 7 customers visiting once a week. And in fact, if you've got 7 customers, you've got a chance of survival. If you've only got 1 customer, you probably haven't. So we need to be clear about who's visiting and when they're visiting and how frequently they're visiting. Now, the other line that I've put on here that you can see is the blue line. These were people who are new customers to the businesses. And our data is showing that, there has been an uplift in the number of new people joining. Now, that really isn't a surprise to me. If you look at how long we were closed for, there was some pent up demand from people who would naturally have joined. And there's probably some demand also from people who are looking at this now and saying, I should have joined a health club. Let me go and join a health club now that they're open. But we are seeing this, and we're referring to this as the 7-week surge. For about the first 7 weeks, there's lots of visit frequency, there's lots of activity, but very quickly that reverts back to 2019 and previous years' behaviours. So the new normal is pretty much the old normal. It's people are going to start to behave the way they behaved pre-pandemic. Yes, there are going to be some alterations in behaviour, but they're not going to be so significant that we completely change the way our business is run. But I think the emphasis that I would place on this today is focus on your data, focus on your numbers. For a lot of you, I know that isn't fun. It's not the exciting part of running a fitness business. But it is, we are in the fitness business. This isn't a hobby thing. This is about making a business out of this. Now, when I work with a lot of the big health club chains, what you do find is that it's so business, they've disconnected from the fitness. So it's about striking that balance. It's about going, we understand our customers, we understand our business. This is good for our customers and it's good for our business. And it's an equally balanced thing rather than going, it's good for us but not for them, or it's good for them but not for us. So you want to pay attention to your numbers and get those really clear. Now, when we're looking at the data, we split it down like this, and this is just an example. I've given an example based on 1,000 members. And I like to use 1,000 members because it makes the numbers easy to understand. Now, what you see here is a list of the types of members that I've given them these names within a club. So starting at the top, you've got the hardcore. These are the people who are coming more than 3 times a week. Below them, you've got the enthusiasts. These are the people who are coming at least 3 times a week. Then you've got your regulars. Those are coming at least twice. Then I refer to this group, the next group, as the triers. These are the people who are trying to have a more active lifestyle within a club environment, but they're just not getting frequently in. They're not getting in frequently enough. So, and they're coming in about once per week. Then you've got the occasionals. These are the people who've maintained their membership, maintained their usage, but they come in less than once per week. And then you've got the sleepers, the people who aren't coming in at all. And when we did this study, we did it over a 21-week period, and there are 11% of customers who are paying and not visiting. I'm going to show you why that is disastrous for a business, rather than being something you can go, oh, we haven't got to worry about that, they're paying but not using. You can actually get significantly more income if you make one small change. Now, The blue line is what we refer to as the at-risk line. Our data from the millions of people we've analysed from over 4,000 facilities has shown us this. People who visit less than once per week are at greater risk of cancelling than the people who visit at least once per week or more. Now, interestingly, above that blue line, it doesn't matter how frequently they come, it doesn't reduce the risk anymore. But just getting them from from less than one to once a week actually reduces your risk of them cancelling significantly. So what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to look at your data and you want to go, right, what proportion are below that line and what proportion are above that line? Then if you could break it down even further and create yourself a table that looks something like this, you'll get a real understanding of what's going on. Now, often we focus on and we recognise those members who are the regulars, enthusiasts and hardcore because they come in so frequently. And when they come in, we talk to them. And when we talk to them, they come back. Now, we've been able to analyse the data and the records from 4.5 million customers from 4,000 facilities, I said before, from 31 different countries. And from that data, we produce what we call our top 10 list, the top 10 factors that impact retention within a health club business. I'm going to show you that list now. So at number 1, and these are ranked most important to not least important, but from most important down, or has the biggest impact. And number 1 is visits. You can have the most spectacular club. You can have the best trainers. They could be rock star trainers. You could have a very efficient business protocol and processes. You can do all of that. But if they don't visit, you don't have a business long term. It's all about, for me, when I'm working with clients, it's generate the next visit. Yes, we focus on all these other factors, but generating visits is the most important thing you can do. Because if they're not there, long term, you don't have a business. When they visit, we've seen that interacting or interactions is the second most important thing you can do or impactful thing you can do. So if they visit, you talk to them. If you talk to them, they visit. Now, if I go back one slide and we talk about the regulars, the enthusiasts and the hardcore, they visit more frequently. So they're more likely to get spoken to more frequently. And if they get spoken to more frequently, they're more likely to visit more frequently. So you get this virtuous cycle where visits gives you the opportunity to interact and interactions drives the next visit. Then we could work down. Now, I do have a separate video and I do go into this in other training programs. But for now, just focus on this. We're looking at visits to generate interactions. This diagram's slightly different because this is visits per month rather than visits per week. What you see here is these are the visits people are making per month as a percentage of the membership. So this was a club we worked with that had 75,000 members, or just over that, but I've rounded down. And you can see that 24% did not visit in the month. 10% only made 1 visit, 9% made 2, 8% made 3. All of these people would be below my threshold line. And I put that red dotted line in to say, look, anything to the left of that red dotted line, they are your at-risk members. And for this business, that was over 50% of their customers. Now, traditionally, they've not really worried about that. But guess what? Post-pandemic, a lot of those people haven't come back. We've identified them by visit frequency. We've been able to look into their data and gone, here's the visit frequency of these people. Here's the people who haven't come back. And guess what? They're pretty much the same people. So understanding your data can really help. And you should be looking to see who's returned, who hasn't returned. And I'll give you an example of how I would tackle that in just a second. Now, this is 24-month retention data by visit frequency. So, and it's monthly visit frequency. So these are visits per month. So what are you looking at here? Well, on the left-hand side, up the left-hand vertical, is the proportion of members. So that's 100%. So let's call that again 1,000 people. Across the horizontal axis, what you've got is you have the months since joining. So this isn't January, February, March, April. This is month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, and so on, right the way through for a 2-year period. And what you can see here is that that black line represents the people who come at least once per week. And the red, yellow and orange lines represent the people who are less likely or are coming less than once per week. So this is a difference between being over that line and under that line. Now, having been a group exercise teacher, not a very good one, but having had a personal training business, having worked in the industry for more than 30 years, I know there are guidelines around frequency, intensity, time and type for people to achieve their goals. I also recognise, as someone who studied retention in health club environments and as a trained, my PhD was in behavioural psychology, the behaviours that we're looking for will not be achieved if we try and jump from less than one visit or one visit per month to 3 times per week. We need to nudge them up. And for your business to be successful, you want to try and get all of those people from the red, yellow and orange groups up to the black line. Your first task with reaching out to your customers is get them visiting once per week. Get them into your business once per week. I know, you know, that's not enough for them to get their physiological changes. Their anatomy won't, or their anatomy wouldn't change, but their physiology won't change. Their lean muscle mass won't change, working out once per week. But it is sufficient to keep them exercising. And from there we can build. We can go from once per week to twice per week. And once they've established that as a behaviour, we can try and move them up to 3 times per week. But you need to get the low visit frequencies up to at least once per week. Now, this is the average length of stay, and it's called the median length of stay because to measure membership length of stay, you have to measure the median average, not the mean average. And there's a statistical reason for that I'm not going to go into now. But if you look at 4 groups, and these are risk factors. So the high risk group are the people who are not coming in. The moderate risk, they're coming in less than once per week. The low risk are coming in once per week, and the very low risk are coming in more frequently. So if you think of this up on the labels as 0, 1, 0, almost 1, 1, more than 1, as those risk factors, the numbers on those bars represent the months of stay. So the very low risk members in the study that we did on the 75,000 stay about 17 months. The low risk about 13, the moderate, we'll call it 12, and the high risk 6. So look at this chart. Sleepers, once they go to sleep, give you about 6 months worth of income. However, even getting them to visit irregularly once a month will keep them almost twice as long. Do not let your sleepers go to sleep. Maybe let them snooze a little bit, but keep waking them up. Our industry has a tradition of almost, if you've not come in for 30 days, we'll leave you alone because you'll keep paying, but you don't come in. My advice is do not wait for 30 days. Do not let them go to sleep, but don't force them to try and come back at a really high frequency. You know, just try and get them saying, let's book you in for 1 session a week. Let's book you in for 1 class a week. Let's book you in for 1 PT session a week. Let's get you visiting once per week and we'll build up from there. Trying to go to the higher levels, really, really tough. And often you'll be putting too much effort in for the reward that will give you back. And that's where your business fitness balance has to work itself out. But look at this. Do not let people go to sleep. They're only worth half as much money to you. You know, and if you've got 100 sleepers paying, let's say $50 a month, you know, and you get 6 months out of them, it's $300. But if you get them visiting once a month for the next 6 months or the next 12 months, you know, you're only talking about 12 visits in total, but that will give you $1,200. That's how much more they're worth. They're worth double the value. Someone who visits irregularly but visits is worth twice as much as someone who goes to sleep. Don't let them go to sleep. Now, some things don't scale, and with small businesses that can be an advantage. When I have to work with large businesses and they say, oh, we've got 7,000 members on site, or we've got 14,000 members on site, some of the suggestions I make, they just can't do because they don't have the volume of staff to carry out the tasks. But when you've got a smaller business and you get really focused on actually who are the ones we need to help the most, your actual numbers become manageable. And there are things you can do, and very specific things you can do. Now, this is a woman that I've worked with in the past. Her name's Dawn Wilkinson, and Dawn works for a small think rec centre type business here in the UK, and we've done the same thing in other countries, but Dawn's the only one I've got pictures of. Now, Dawn works 5 hours a week making courtesy calls to customers who've got low usage. So she's focusing on those people who are initially below the line, or people who are only coming in once a week, depending upon her workload. So she focuses, two groups, those who are not coming in, and then when she's dealt with all of those, she focuses on all of those that are coming in, but only coming in once a week. Now, we call everything a courtesy call. We don't call them low usage calls. We don't ring people up and ask them about their visit frequency. We just don't do it. We just call it a courtesy call. Now, when I was working with her and her team, her and the company that she works for back in 2018, we got her to make calls. And between September and November, we tracked what she did. She made the calls from home. She just rang people up. First, we sent them an SMS saying, we're going to call you. This is the number we're going to call you on. Please put this number in your phone so you know that when we ring, that's who's ringing you. It's not just a random number. Then you can choose to ignore us or answer it. That's up to you. So we sent them an SMS message. Then she rang them. She managed in that 3-month period to get in touch with 164 customers who'd not been in for 21 days. Now, I'll explain the 21 days thing in a second. Of the 164 people she spoke to, she got 164 people back visiting the club within 7 days of her call. She's a rock star. For me, when I see the adverts going, we want rock star instructors, Dawn's a rock star. She just saved 164 customers. She only works minimal hours. She's not on a huge pay, but she's really, really useful within the business. And if you're a small business and you can make a couple of calls, 2 or 3 calls a day, you could have a similar impact, particularly if you're the owner, particularly if you're the lead person that people recognize as being part of the business. Now, within that period of time, or since that period of time, it's not within that period of time, since that period of time, within that organisation, we reduced their sleepers from 23% to just 12%. We halved them of their total membership. So we halved the number of sleepers in the 16-month period, which meant when they went into lockdown, they only had a small proportion of people who slept or were sleeping. And guess what? When they reopened, they were less impacted by this huge number of people who are not coming back, because it wasn't a huge number. It was around about 12% of their customers. So bear in mind that something you could do as a smaller independent business is something that a lot of the bigger businesses can't do. A lot of the bigger businesses are having to send emails, they're having to send text messages that are semi-personalised. Hi, Paul. So they've managed to get my name right. Most of them don't even do that. It's like, hi, dear valued customer. Well, if I'm so valued, why don't you know my name? Now, I mentioned here that, she called them if they hadn't been in for 21 days. So here we're looking at a thing where we're saying we're not even focusing on them not coming in for 30 days. We're catching them before that, because we did analysis within this business which showed us that the average gap in visit frequency, or the longest gaps in visit frequency, were about 18 days. Now, that makes a lot of sense here in the UK, because our vacation periods per year, most people take a vacation, a 2-week holiday, 14 days. Now, the vast majority of people don't come in and train on the day they go on holiday, and they don't train on the day they come back. So that's 14, one either side, that's 16. We give them a little bit of wriggle room, and then we've said, if they've not been in for 21 days, we're going to call them. When I've worked in the US with some of the US operators, we've made that 17 days. When I work in Australia, it's 26 days. Because if you live in Australia and you travel in, if you travel in Australia, or people when they go on vacation there tend to go a long distance, because everything's a long way from Australia. So they tend to go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So we were able to manage the data based on the gaps in the visit frequency. So we were looking for the largest gap. That's why it's 21 days. But that's what we're not letting them drift into sleep. They might have nodded off and we've woken them up. Now, what I would do is I would focus on this. It's about calling non-returners. And the approach I would use is what I call last in, first to call. So, a little bit difficult to explain this diagram, but I'm going to do my best. Focus first on the red and yellow dot that says lockdown. That's the date in which your business probably had to close. There was a period of time it was closed, and then there's a reopening date. The people I would call first are the people who didn't return after the opening date, but were still using you the first month before you shut. So you're going to work backwards from here. So if I do this as you shut in the end of March, all of the people you'd ring first when you reopened will be the people who trained in March who have not returned. The ones who've returned, that's fine. Welcome them. Let them know what you've done for your changes. Make sure you interact with them. But for the ones who've not returned, your first focus should be those people who trained in March before lockdown. Once you've made an attempt to contact all of those, you go back to all the people who trained in February. Once you've spoken to all of those or tried to contact them, you go back to all those in January. What happens after January? Don't bother. If they weren't coming in for 3 months leading up to lockdown, and you hadn't contacted them then, I wouldn't even bother contacting them now. You know, I had a conversation with a very large US operator recently, and they said, "Oh, we've been open since June 2020. We went into a lockdown period, and we've been locked down, and we've been open since June 2020. Now it's June now. You know, when I'm recording this for you, it's June." They said, "What should we do for those people who haven't returned?" And I just laughed. I just said to them, "You are kidding. You think that people who," and I think they were shut down for about 3 months, people who were training at the beginning of 3 months before June 2020, so it's January, February, March probably. January, February, March of 2020, and you haven't called them. Do you really think they're going to return now? I said, you'd be better off putting all of your effort into looking after the customers you've got and trying to acquire new ones. Those ones, they've gone. You've lost them. And actually, it doesn't say very much about you if you've waited, you know, more than 12 months to even consider what you're going to do with them. So as a smaller organisation, as a smaller business, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to get out there and get in touch with people as frequently as quickly as possible once you've reopened. So I hope this diagram makes sense. You're going to call the last people, the people who came in closest to your lockdown date, and work out from there. You're not going to call all of them. You're only going to call the ones who didn't return. Now, the way this works out is that, you know, pre-pandemic, let's say you had a membership of 1,000, you've had 600 return, 400 have not returned. Then you've got, of the people who've returned, you've got those who are visiting more than once per week, and I've given a 350 number to that. You've got visiting less than once per week, and I've given that as 150. And you've got a group that are paying but not visiting. So they've agreed to pay again, whether you've reinstated their membership or you've just gone, but you know, you've turned back all your payment systems on. So they're happy to pay, but they've not visited. So you've got those. Then you've also got the non-returners. And the non-returners, I would include the frozen and the cancelled. Now, how would I tackle these groups? I would tackle them like this. So you've got these 5 groups to look at and you go, where do I go first? First of all, I'd focus on the people who are visiting less than once per week. They've already shown you they're prepared to come back to your business, but then they're in the at-risk group. These are the people you want to get back in and visiting at least once per week. So if you were to create a spreadsheet or a report or however you do it, first of all, identify who's returning and Who's coming less than once per week, if your software will allow you to do that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the paying but not visiting. These obviously are showing you they have some confidence in your business, but they're not actually returning. So these are the ones in that last diagram where I'd reach out to and I'd work backwards through. You haven't visited, but you did visit just before lockdown. I'd go after, that's my group 2. Then I would go after the frozen, because these people have yet to cancel, but you can reach out to them and just reassure them about what you're doing within your business. This is the time when you still should be sending testimonials from customers saying, I've returned, it's great, it's wonderful. A lot of people did that as soon as they opened. They did 2 or 3 going, oh, it's great to be back. Keep going with it. Keep going with it and send those messages to the types of customers that are frozen or paying and not visiting. You want to be reassuring these people. Now, some of those frozen, some of you will be going, oh, I'm worried about waking those frozen people up. Well, one, they're not paying you. And secondly, when they wake up, they'll either leave or they will return. So they're either going to drop into the cancelled group anyway, or they're going to start using your club. You're better off trying to be proactive and encouraging them back in, rather than hoping that when they unfreeze, that they're going to go into the pay but not visit. So you might as well be proactive, you might as well take action. And it's probably only a small group of people. You might even be able to phone them individually and ask them, how things are. It's a courtesy call. Ask them when they were thinking of coming back. And if they go, well, I'm not sure, they go, that's fine. We're here for you when you're ready. Now, you'll have to make your own decisions about when you stop the freeze process. But I'd probably rather keep people frozen, because they in their head they still have a status of membership, rather than them cancelling. Now, top tips and tactics for increasing visit frequency. Well, I've broken these down by age group. I've not called them millennials or Gen X or anything, because my data doesn't show it in that format. So what I would say is this: for the 18 to 34-year-olds, if you want to increase their visit frequency, give them challenges, particularly around visit frequency or around cumulative challenges. And what I mean by cumulative challenges is, like, if you had things like a concept 2 rower, which is a little bit easier to do this on, you say, this month's challenge is to accumulate, 5,000 meters. 5,000 is too low. 50,000 meters or 10,000 meters, something reasonable. Yeah, something that everybody could do. It's not a challenge where you get a first, second, third. It's a completion challenge where every member of your club technically could complete it. If you're in a studio environment, that would be, how many of these classes can you do this month? Or if they're tracking their data, how many MEPs, if you're using something like MyZone, or how many calories have you burned, and have a calorie challenge. Don't make it extravagant. Make it something that the largest proportion of your customers could achieve, rather than just a small proportion. So you can then celebrate more people. So in Group X, again, it's a visit thing. Can you sustain a chain of activity? I come Monday, I come Wednesday, I come Monday, I come Wednesday, I come Monday, I'll come Wednesday. Can you keep that chain going for the next 5 weeks, the next 10 weeks? And then also start to introduce new activities. Start to parallel things. So I know when I work with clubs that both have studios for Group X and have an outdoor space and have a gym floor, I would say, people who are doing functional training on the gym floor might do your boot camp. Now, if people who are doing functional training on the gym floor probably are less interested in doing your yoga. Now, I know that's a generalization, but try and parallel things. Someone who's riding an exercise bike might do an indoor cycling class, those types of things. Get them across, but try and get them involved in new activities to freshen up the experience. Then with the 35 to 54-year-olds, these, we've seen this group coming back in their droves. These are probably the biggest group coming back at the moment. Now, one of the things you do want to do is give them recognition for their behaviour. Now, they might be behaving visit frequency wise the same as the 18 to 34-year-olds, but these people really value that you recognise that they're coming in. This is the second time this week. This is the third time this week. You've completed this many sessions this month. That becomes really important because it gives a sense of recognition of achievement. And it's not like goal achievement. It's just, we know that you've been in here and we appreciate it. I'd also start to re-establish their goals, but only over about a 3-month period. So these next two come together. So you're re-establishing their goals and you're giving them 3-month targets. Why 3-month targets? A lot of people are anxious about what's going to happen. They're not thinking long term. They're thinking medium term, medium short term. So give them goals to work towards for the next 3 months. Map that out, 12-week program, 12-week plans. Maybe in your group X, say, we're working on this over the next 12-week period because we've got some event that we're all going to do outside when it's sunny, when it's nice, if that's appropriate. And then the over 55s, these have been a lot more cautious about coming back. Many of these are the ones who are coming back for health reasons, as opposed to just aesthetic reasons. And I'm not suggesting the others are just aesthetic, but a lot of these people are coming back for health reasons. One of the things you want to get from them is a testimonial. One of the things, get them talking about what they like about coming back and doing classes, doing the club, working out. You want them saying how good they're feeling. And the reason you do that is it has multiple benefits. One, when they say it, it actually reminds them that that's what they're getting. So you start to reinstill that behaviour of coming to the gym back in them. Secondly, it's most likely to be believed as being more honest because it's coming from a customer, from a member, rather than coming from the club. It's all right, the club going, we're clean, we're looking after you, we're doing that. That's one thing. When a member says, it's really clean, I'm really happy, everyone seems to be looking after me, that resonates in a slightly different way. We would also hijack the traditional sales process, which was be a friend, bring a friend, like a referral program. And we've referred to that as be a friend, bring a friend back. So if you've got older members over 55, that would include me, who are coming back to the gym and they used to train with their friends, or they know other people that used to train and have not come back, then use them to get their friends and colleagues to come back, because that reassurance, again, from someone they know, has a very high trust value. It'll also help reduce anxiety, and it's the social proof of, I see people like me doing the things I like to do, therefore it must be the right thing to do. And where you can, if you can, turn them into a news story. Find ways of using them as like a testimonial that also becomes a news story. Here's our 99-year-old member who's doing the yoga class today for the 5th time this month. Talk about them, get them talking, make a news story. Lots of news channels and lots of local magazines and things are always looking for content. Now, I'm not a marketing expert, but we have found this to be really, really useful in terms of spreading that word. Also, people then become aware of your business just as a matter of marketing through that process. But the news organisations want good news stories, and they love good news stories about older people. If you say, oh, this 21-year-old athlete got back into training, that's not news. Whereas this 88-year-old grandmother is back doing her 1-hour cardio sessions a day, that's more interesting. So where you can, turn them into a news story. So that's it for this session. There are some, like I said, we're going to be doing some additional online learning. You'll be able to sign up and register for those. For the time being, that's it from me. I hope you found this session useful. I hope there's things in it you can go away and take action on. And now I'm going to take questions and answer the questions that have been forwarded to me. That's it. Dr. Paul Bedford, thank you very much for your time and attention. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.